Hello, everyone. Say hello. Introduce yourself. Who are you? This random person coming on the stream.
Well, I'm Jenny Luddington, and I wear a lot of hats, sort of thing. So I am the facilitator of a women's ceremonial group called the Kent Goddess Group, and we meet in Folkestone in Kent. But I also co-host a podcast called The Wheel with my friend Hazel Sargent, and we started that as a lockdown project. Neither of us had done anything like this before, and we're very much learning as we go. And we are talking to people about their pagan parts, and we have lots of guests on, sort of thing. So we're learning as we're exploring the podcasting side of things.
Oh, so did you have this in your head before? Is this something that's just sort of spontaneously combusted in you, like, oh, and I need to create this content? Or was it just an idea to pacify the time? Because I know a lot of people were like twiddling the thumbs, or was it something, have you always been into creating content? I think that's my question.
I think it was a little bit of both, really. I think, it's something Hazel and I had talked about in the past, how it would be fun to do something like that. Within paganism, a lot of people keep something which they refer to as a book of shadows. So a book of shadows might be where you write up any spell work that you do or the learning that you're undertaking. So we refer to the podcast now as our audio book of shadows.
Right. I love that name. I love that name, Book of Shadows. It sounds so mysterious, doesn't it?
I mean, different people call it different things. It could just be a working journal. Some people refer to it as a book of illuminations. I mean, Book of Shadows sounds proper mystic and witchy, though, doesn't it?
Oh, it sounds like you're gonna go like, I don't know. It's like something like you're hearing like an emperor say in a movie, like, I will get this book of shadows on you. You know, it sounds like that, but it's actually quite a sweet thing, isn't it?
I mean, it is lovely, and you can do it old school. You can have something that's pen and paper based. I tend to do things and write them up as Word documents. Then if I need to go back and alter them and change them, and I'm not terrified about spoiling a beautiful leather bound kind of a book. Not that I'd have a leather bound one anyway.
Oh, I was going to bring that up. Naughty.
But yeah, you can keep notes on your phone, sort of thing, and it'll be about whatever I'm researching at the time. And because we are creating weekly content for the podcast, I'm generally researching or revisiting a topic each week.
Can I just say, what's the link to your podcast? What's it actually called, so I can put it up in the bottom bit?
It's just called The Wheel Podcast. So on Facebook, you can still search for it at The Wheel Podcast.
Okay, I'll put that down.
But
is it available on Spotify? Is it?
It's available on all good places that you would find podcasts. So Apple Podcasts.
I love a good podcast, me, because I always have this in my ear. I tend to. This is what happens with me. I tend to drift off in my own head sometimes and overthink. Say overthink, but think a lot. And podcasts sort of break that cycle of dwelling. So I like to sit there and just listen to what people's opinions are and what type of topic. I've got Audible, which I listen to all these audio books and autobiographies. I lap them up.
And I think that's the thing, I have quite a long commute, and I've always made my commute. When I was on buses, it was about an hour. Now I get access to work because I've got some neurological issues, so I get a taxi, and it only takes about half hour because I'm not stopping and starting. But
does the driver get out the car and just open the back door for you?
Yeah, I like to use that time productively, and there's loads of different types of podcasts that I listen to. I like to listen to ones about sort of paganism and witchcraft, but also about myth and storytelling.
Oh wow, storytelling! Do you write? Do you actually? I know spells and stuff, but do you write your own novels or create content that way?
I write a lot of poetry and I do a lot of journaling. So I use journaling as like a well-being tool sort of thing. And I think, it's great for people who are struggling with their mental health or just want to develop a regular daily practice, because a journal, you don't have to share it with anybody. It can be completely private. I don't know if you've ever read The Artist's Way, and they have a practice called morning pages, which is the first thing you do on getting up in the morning is you write 3 pages longhand, and then you can go back and review that, or you can just use it as like a brain dump. And then if you do read it back, you do find out you're really quite shallow.
So what contents does this include? Is it just mundane stuff? Or
It can be mundane stuff. I mean, I tend to, when I'm doing morning pages, I usually try and record my dreams in it, because I find if I don't write my dream, as soon as I wake up, it just evaporates.
Easily done, isn't it?
But, I don't know if you've ever sort of ruminated on stuff.
Do you mean in the mornings or in general?
Yeah, just, if you have, like an intrusive thought that keeps just banging around in your brain.
I don't know. And it could link to what I said before about overthinking. Is that similar?
Very, very similar.
Because I tend to look at things. When you say about measuring 3 times and knocking once. Something when you're doing DIY. I do it 10 times and then knock. It takes me months to do anything because I tend to panic about doing it wrong. And that's my thought process about everything. So maybe doing that in the mornings might help me, because I read the Daily Stoic, this book here, in the mornings, because it's every day you read it, and it's like a philosophical
really interesting angle. You should say that. I run a wellbeing book club, and that was our book last month. It's brilliant, isn't it?
You like it? Oh, what? I you'd never heard of it before that, or?
No, I literally, we were looking at things to read. I wanted something short and episodic because people get busy at this time of year. And I thought, that's quite good, because if even people can't read the whole book, they can maybe read, September's entries. So
exactly. I mean, this book, I've read it for about 1.5 years, and it's literally brain training, but in book form. It's everything in that, as you know, that. For the audience, this is every page is a day, and it shows you the original text of what the Stoics have said in the past, and then it has an explanation of that and how it relates to modern ways of living and how you could change. I love it because it seeps in after a while and you live by it.
And it's really interesting. I read an awful lot of wellbeing books.
Yeah.
And, you've got Eckhart Tolle and The Power of Now, and you're sitting there and then you get something like the Daily Stoic, and it's like, actually, dead Greek and Roman guys were saying this a long time. It's not New Age; it's Old Age.
Well, and it links quite well to paganism, because obviously paganism is something that's an individual human experience, isn't it? I mean, tell me about your experience with paganism or where it came from.
Well, it was quite interesting. I think, I started out, like a lot of people, exploring Christianity. I wasn't raised in a faith tradition. But when I was 14, I had a friend who was churched, and we went, the famous TV evangelist Billy Graham was coming over to the UK when I was about 14.
Rings a bell, but I don't know him.
So a goodly few years ago now, I was a teenager. And anyway, I went up to Wembley Stadium. So he'd filled a stadium with people that were going to be saved. And I went up and I got saved. And it was the night that the stage got hit by lightning. So maybe that was a telling story there. And then I went off and I did one of the Alpha courses. And that was all going along quite well. They feed you really well at an Alpha course. If you get the opportunity to sign up to one, do. There's donuts and everything. And I was going on this course and I was doing very, very well with all the teachings and all their philosophies, until they got to they were describing 10 myths. And the last myth that they had was that people believe that there are different ways to the divine and we all just take different routes. And they said that's an absolute myth, that's an absolute lie. And I couldn't buy into that. I couldn't think that there was only ever one way of knowing what God was or what the divine was. Yeah. Well, that kind of put a kibosh on it for me, and I would have said that I was a very non-spiritual person moving forwards from that. And then in my mid-20s, I kind of had a trauma, and I was trying to find some sense of meaning from that. Yeah. And again, I was looking at different things, and the first kind of books on paganism that you would probably come across even today is Wicca. So I was looking at Wicca, and Wicca has some dogma to it. So they have things like the threefold law, which is the idea, it's a bit like karma, that anything good or bad you do comes back to you 3 times. And I just don't think that the universe works that way. I don't, because I know some really rotten people who have never been troubled by a bit of bad luck in their lives. And conversely, I know some really
you don't know you don't know that though, because I know a lot of people who on the surface put on a show, and then suddenly you realise they've been struggling for a long time, and because of the way they act, and it sort of feeds into itself, doesn't it? It's that idea that there was some of the people who do these actions on the surface look like they're getting away with it, but they're not actually. They're living an awful life where they're miserable all the time, and to me, you can see it in their eyes. Do you know what I mean? It's and I do believe that. I do believe that the universe. I'm going to go into it now. The universe, whatever you put into the universe, you get back, or you get a sign somehow that you get in somewhere. It's like tonight with the sunset. Every time I do something positive, I get the sunshine that comes out and lets me know. It seems weird. I feel like I'm crazy.
But yeah, I think for me, it was the idea that it's not that neat. You know, I do think like attracts like, and I think if you give out a lot of positivity, you're likely to get it back. Yeah. But I don't think it always is 3 times.
No, because there's some people in different areas of the world who are always great spirited, but they're always down on the luck, aren't they? They're never going to attract like for like, are they, in that situation? So it's all about where you are, isn't it, as a person? So how comforting is paganism to you?
It is really comforting. I found that we live kind of cyclically. I can't even say that.
Oh, look at you! I'm not saying it. No way I'm trying that out.
And it's that idea that, you know, there's a season for everything. So if you're experiencing loss, for us, that's not necessarily the end.
Yes.
And whether you believe that in a spiritual sense, in that you go on to a different higher place, or whether you just believe that your body goes and returns to the earth and decomposes, and then you feed the worms that feed the birds that feed the things, and you go round and around. So I find a lot of comfort in that. So whereas I was saying Wicca didn't really resonate with me, but after that I found a book called Hedge Witch by Ray Beth. And it's Wiccan-esque sort of thing, but it's all about the idea of being a solo practitioner and following the seasons and living in tune with the earth and living gently with the earth, not seeing ourselves above or below the other creatures. There was lots of work around meditation and visualization and celebrating the seasons as they come and go. And I mean, who would want to celebrate more?
That sounds so great. Is this what Stonehenge thing's about?
Well, again, we don't know for sure what Stonehenge's purpose was. It aligns with the summer and winter solstice. It probably had a ritual purpose, but
not solid in paganism.
It's become a very pagan place, and you had a revival in the 18th century. Sort of thing, and the Druids, we connect very much with Stonehenge even to today, but a lot of what we know is kind of reconstruction, it's conjecture, it's best guesses, because the Druidic class were wiped out when the Romans came over and brought Christianity. So some people believe that they were wiped out, other people believe that power likes power, so some people believe that the Druids just became the priests.
Yes.
And I think that's very likely.
I was going to bring that up about individualism in paganism. I know you run a group and you've got podcasts and you're meeting people, but it seems to me a very solo experience, something that you do with yourself, and it's not really. I mean, obviously you connect to other people, but is it lonely at times to sort of? And you sat in your room and you're meditating. Is it quite a lonely experience, or do you feel at one with the earth? Is that where you go with it?
I think it can be either, neither, or both. You know, I know some people who are solitary practitioners and it's their absolute idea of hell to sit in a circle and get happy clappy. And their relationship with God or the divine, because not all pagans are duotheistic, you get non-theistic pagans. So you've got people that believe in a god and a goddess, you've got people that believe in multiple gods and goddesses, you've got people that believe all of those aspects of those multiple gods and goddesses are just kind of like factions of small parts of a great whole. And some people think, no, they're not at all. They're all unique and individual, and every single god and goddess exists in that kind of unique. So a lot of it is decoding and reading and researching and working out what makes sense to you. I've always described paganism as a religion with homework.
Oh, you don't have to tell me, because honestly, I thought, great, paganism. I'm ignorant to everything about this. This is why I'm doing these series of interviews with different faiths, different beliefs, different ways of doing it, because I wanted to know more about each one. And I thought, paganism that'll be easy enough. It's nature and that. My God, what the hell's going on here? There's so much. It's like paganism's this, and it branches off into like branches of different areas to research. I'm like, how am I going to narrow this down? Do you know what I mean? I know you've told me in what you are, but I don't understand what that is until I get to the interview. Because to me, I mean, there's this quote. I put it here. It says some pagans are Wiccans, but all Wiccans are pagans, and only some pagans are witches. Yeah.
So it would be the same as saying all halibut are fish, but not all fish are halibut.
Oh, okay. You've put that in a bit more. Thank you.
So it is more fair to talk about paganisms, because pagan is just an umbrella term.
Yes.
For a lot of different faiths.
I never knew that until I started researching for you. So it's a good job we're doing this interview, isn't it? Because it's blew my mind. How much.
Common paths would include Druidry, Astratus, so that's the ancient Norse, Hellenismos, which is the ancient Greek, Greco-Romano. What else am I thinking of?
I'm putting pressure on you now.
Just so many, no pressure sort of thing. So, I mean, I can only talk about my experience.
Well, this is what I was going to bring it back to. I was going to say, I'm only going to talk to you about your individual experiences of what you do. And obviously I've touched upon the lonely aspect of it. But how does do you do incense? Do you do herbs, candles, and what is it to you? What does that involve to you, paganism?
Right. Again, you can use a lot of tools and a lot of props. Yeah. And you can use nothing. You can go outside, you can find a favourite tree, you can sit beneath it, and you can connect with nature. Yeah. All of those things that you've listed, I absolutely love. I haven't made any candle that I didn't like. I like to make my own incense. I like to use herbs in my spellcraft and in my practice, and that's grown and grown and grown. So last year I was really exploring herbalism. So I've looked into magical herbalism. I've looked into medical herbalism. I've started growing herbs. I've started going on foraging walks, so I can go and I can look and I can find something.
Where's your favourite walk?
Oh, my favourite walk. I went on one a little while ago. So I'm in Folkestone. I'm very close to Dover. And we went on a lovely guided foraging walk, and we walked from Dover train station up the infamous 64 steps, which are really steep, around Western Heights, down to a little village called Aycliffe, and then up a great big cliff called Shakespeare's Cliff. And it's mentioned in a couple of Shakespeare's plays. He was a very regular visitor to Dover with a touring company.
Oh, I've never, ever been.
Oh, it's amazing. Come down. I'll give you a tour.
I want to go. Well, the other pagan I want to introduce you to, I'll give you her details in a bit. Her name's Leora. She lives in London, and she loves walking. She loves going into nature. She's very much like you in that sense. So I am planning a visit down to London, and she was going to take me somewhere. I don't know where. I think it was going to be Brighton or somewhere along the coast or whatever. But Dover sounds great. That sounds
Dover's
great.
great.
I'd love to do that. So what again? How long will you be on this on these walks? How long did it last for? Is it a whole day?
That one was about 4 hours. I mean, there was plenty of breaks, and we were talking to the tour guide sort of thing, and we were sort of having a look at things and picking things.
Yeah.
But just any time, as I said, I'm very lucky to be living so close to the sea. It's literally 10 minutes by bus,
And it's so
5 minutes
beautiful
car.
down there. Whenever I look,
it's gorgeous.
I mean, I'm going to Llandudno tomorrow, which is on the Welsh coast, and I can't wait because it's near the sea. Maybe I'm a pagan and I don't even know.
I think there's a little bit of pagan in everyone, if I'm honest.
Well, because we all come from the same place, don't we? We all share the same energy, the same space. So I reckon we all are. We just ignore it. Yeah, because like everything you describe, it's like today I put a video up on my Facebook, on my YouTube, upset because they're building houses on a whole of the land, the last green space we've got left, and it upsets me because I want to be in touch with nature, and there's a small spot where I sit next to an inland river, and it's all flowy, and I sit there for hours just thinking about stuff and clearing my head, and I wish I'd lived down south where you are now, to be fair.
But I think, if our experiences of lockdown taught us anything, is actually how dependent we are on nature. When we couldn't go out and about and do what we wanted, how precious did that hour a day of going outside and exercising and, being outside of the four walls that we were looking at.
Yeah, I mean, it highlighted it, but some people seem to have forgotten it all of a sudden again. They seem to have gone back on themselves, and they believe state propaganda and what state's saying about certain things. And when I turned vegan, it's like an awakening. It's sort of, I was like, how the hell did I believe all this? And then it opened my mind to other possibilities of what else am I being lied about? What else is going on? And this is where we come in, because I'm trying to get to understand from different areas of society where the line is. And I think paganism, I'm going to die. I got it. Got something in my throat. I think paganism seems to fit my line of thinking. Do you agree?
Yeah, definitely. And I think we all want to live in tune with the earth. Yes. And I think that we struggle with modern living because it removes us from nature.
It boxes us in, doesn't it, into this
like
we're doing now.
We are living 24/7. We are constantly at the beck and call of these devices that are going bing, 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 bing.
Yeah.
I mean,
I turn mine off half the time and once you do, you start hearing things more like birds.
Yeah.
It's amazing how that little thing helps. Do you know what I mean? So with paganism, by the way, is it a Christian? I read somewhere that it's a Christian sort of conception that it was because they didn't like pagans. They sort of sectioned you off into your own little group and called you pagan. Is that right? Am I getting that wrong?
Right. Would you know where the word pagan comes from?
Go on.
Right, pagan comes from paganus, and that was Latin, and it basically meant countryside dweller, because obviously it was the towns that became Christianized first. So basically, pagan means, very nicely, country bumpkin.
Hey, nice.
Because you weren't sophisticated, you weren't doing what the city folk were doing. You were still doing your own, folkloric traditions. You were worshipping the ancient gods, sort of thing.
Yeah, so you were staying in your bubble outside of this metropolitan area, which was just starting to become more, that way, and staying true to tradition, which is based in nature, isn't it?
And a lot of Christian festivals are kind of really thinly overlaid on pagan festivals.
Oh, I know that. I mean, I wrote it down. It's the Christmas, Easter, the whole lot, isn't it? It's all based in the artificial way. Because with Christmas, wasn't wasn't the pagan Christmas earlier or something?
Right, you've got the winter solstice, which is the 21st of December or around then. It's an astrological date, so it can change. But also, you have the 25th of December, which is the Sol Invictus, and that is the birth of the unconquerable sun. So birth of the sun, the birth of that sun.
Okay,
so
explain that.
So, as far as I'm aware, the evidence for Jesus, his birth would have been in the spring when the lambs were born.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have been in the middle of December.
Yeah, so why move it? What had he tried to hijack a pagan festival?
I wouldn't say hijack, but if people are coming together to celebrate these events and you're coming in with a new religion and you're kind of saying, hey guys, our religion isn't really very different from you. You were worshipping this person that was born on the 25th of December. We want you to worship this person who was born on the 25th of December. In tune with what's going on in the year. So, at the winter solstice, the sun stands still for 3 days in the sky. That sun is returning. Now, whether that sun is S-U-N or whether that sun is S-O-N.
Jesus.
It's a case of semantics.
Yeah, well, obviously. I mean, does it upset pagans when, do they look back at that and go, as a way of looking at... I mean, obviously, you don't get annoyed because...
I think there's a couple of things. I think sometimes when people's closed practices are appropriated, that can upset a lot of people.
Yeah.
When it gets exploited and it's taken away from Indigenous people, sort of thing. So within the sort of pagan wheel of the year, the autumn equinox is also known as a festival called Mabon. And there's a whole brouhaha about that. I'm of a generation of witches where we were brought up with it being called Mabon. But actually, Mabon is a Welsh god that was kind of appropriated by some guys. And the Welsh can get quite upset about their god being used and taken out of context, which I completely understand. And I think sometimes a lot about paganism, you learn from sources which may not be as historically accurate as they could be.
Well,
so you learn a lot of stuff,
we're back
and
to this
then
point
you
again.
unlearn a lot of stuff.
We're back to this point again of literally the history books are written by the victor or by the people who conquered or the people who want to change it to their image. And what is real then? Do you know what I mean? It's a scary thought, isn't it, that you could be living in a country where none of it is real? Again, like the Matrix.
And again, you had we lost a lot of our Indigenous folkloric practices because Christianity came in and wiped them out. They were oral traditions. So if they weren't written down, so you've only got, as you said, what the victors wrote down about our traditions. And so a lot of what we do, there is research out there and there's stuff that you can learn about, but there's also something that we call unverifiable personal gnosis. And that's the idea of the things that are revealed to you in meditations and that you can't necessarily say, yeah, this is 100% accurate or 100% true, but is it 100% authentic to you? Yes.
So is it again, back to the individual again, what your perception of and how you're feeling at the time. I know my friend does dream meditation. Was it dream mapping? Is it dream? Where she'll listen to what you dreamed about. She'll write it
dream
down.
Analysis.
Could be something like that. I know it's not analysis. It's something like that. She maps your dreams basically and talks about what they could mean and what they could unfold out into. And I've been meaning to get back to her to do it really because my dreams are mental. You can imagine with me, can't you? But the one thing that occurs to me about paganism is it's not really based in physical commodities like phone or anything of or a cross, or it's all about the what's not seen. It's about belief, isn't it?
I mean, we do have signs and symbols. So I mean, a very common sign within paganism is the pentacle and the pentagram. So
is that yes, I've seen it. Yeah.
So, it will mean different things for different people, but for a lot of us, it is the 4 cardinal points, so earth, air, fire, and water, and then the 5th point goes up to be spirit.
Yes, that sounds great already. That sounds fantastic. Okay, we're gonna have to go into this now. Where does Satan fit in your pagan movement? Does he exist? Because I've read a lot of things that he doesn't exist in some pagan notions, that they don't acknowledge him because he's a Christian concept.
Yeah, exactly that. For a lot of us, he's a Christian concept. Obviously, within paganism, if you're worshipping Jewistically sort of thing, you might have the great god and the great goddess. And for quite a lot of people, the god is seen as the horned god. So that just means he's antlered.
Yeah. He's tall, isn't he?
Tall and antlered sort of thing.
Yeah. So what's
and there's
his
lots
name?
of antlered goddesses as well. But obviously, again, bit of a smear campaign. Christianity took that god and said, "Here's Satan."
Yes, and he's in TV shows now, because there's this TV show called, you must have seen it. It's called Sabrina.
Yeah.
On Netflix right now, and it's dark and dismal, and they've got pagans in it, and they're all like murderers, and the crazians. Obviously, they've got the horn thing. Oh, yeah. Worship him, and it sort of colours your perception of the whole thing. So you don't recognise Satan as anything that exists to you?
No. And I mean, even if you explore Satanism and LaVey Satanists and the Church of Satan, they recognise Satan as the ego.
Well, yes, this is what this book's about, actually. It's about what Outwitting the Devil it's called. It's about how your mindset turns on itself into devil actions, really. So I know there's a couple of people who say they worship Satan as a part of paganism. Does that work?
Not to my understanding and knowledge of it, sort of thing. I would think that somebody who worshipped Satan would probably refer to themselves as Satanist rather than as a pagan.
Well, exactly, because one of my bits of research was that it was being bold capital letters: pagans are not Satanists. Get it? And obviously, I didn't think you were, because to me, in the media, if Satanists are here, paganism's way on the other side. Because whenever I picture pagans, it's all you dancing in fields, like flowing. Oh, you're so nice. And I never see you going. So.
It's very unfortunate that a lot of the people that get a lot of the media in the pagan community are people that you really wish wouldn't.
Well, you get that with anything, don't you? Any belief system. I mean, look at the vegan movement. You always get people on who don't know what they're talking about, and they're always like raving lunatics. You're like, I'm gonna hold up. Get the normal people on who can articulate.
And we're normal people. We're teachers, we're psychiatrists, we're social workers, we're bog standard people that have these very deep held spiritual beliefs. And I'm quite out in pagan communities because I've done a lot of volunteering for the Pagan Federation and stuff like that. Done a lot of advocacy. I worked on the disabilities team, which was including people that might, for whatever reason, want community but struggle to get out and get involved.
Well, because of anxieties and stuff.
Right. Anxiety, accessibility, mental health issues, physical health issues. And we started doing online festivals a good 4 or 5 years ago, before the pandemic. And then we watched the rest of the world kind of find out how to do things online because we weren't getting out and about. So it was really interesting. I mean, when you've seen socially distanced Morris dancing on Zoom, that will stay with you, Stephen.
Oh, I bet. I mean, well, I've seen all the TikToks, all those dancing nurses, and to me, I as long as, because someone I met recently on one of these interviews, he's a massive TikTok fan, and I don't get it. To me, TikTok is melting people's brains a little bit, making them a bit weird, but I liked his approach because he used it as a means to make people happy. Rather, he didn't take it too seriously like most people do with any platform, and I like that. I like the fact he's getting out there and he's helping people, get into a better mindset. And I guess that's what you're doing too.
Yeah, well, I like to think so. And I think, there is a big community out there. We had the last census and there was a big push to just put pagan as your answer, because if everybody's their own little off branch of it, we actually don't have a voice collectively.
Yeah, I get
We're
it.
not one of the big major religions.
Divide and conquer, isn't it, really, with that?
So, I mean, my personal path kind of straddles a couple of things. I'm a Hellenic Recon, which means I worship the ancient Greek gods.
Yeah.
But also I am the Kent goddess group that I kind of inherited from some other people is run as the Avalonian tradition. Now, the Avalonian tradition is very much connected with the Glastonbury goddess temple. And for me, that's a really fantastic way of exploring the divine feminine and a woman's journey as well. And it's getting a little bit broader because it was quite narrow and defined. And we talk about things like maid and mother crone, which can be quite limiting because not every woman experiences being a mother.
Good point again. Good point.
So we're always looking to broaden and make our paganism more inclusive, because there was a lot of, male and female and gender stereotyping, and, how is that including our gay and lesbians, brothers and sisters and stuff like that, or non-binary. So there's always looking back, because it's a living tradition. It's not set in the past. We take some stuff from the past, but you've got to keep it vibrant and evolving for it to have relevance to people today.
As with nature, it's all about evolving and the cycle. So there is a cycle to nature, isn't there? And this is what you touched on before about when you die, what happens, and do you go in the ground and just decompose? But in that motion, it's a circle, because you've reborn somewhere else. You're becoming a part of where you came from, and it's a circle of the universe, circle. And paganism seems to fit that mindset pretty nicely, I think.
Well, I think so. It makes sense to me, and I feel better when I'm living cyclically. Because, in the winter, it's sort of like in the dark half of the year that we've just moved into. So we've had the autumn equinox, and now the days are getting shorter and the nights are getting longer. But what I do in the evening is I try and not have the lights on. I'll have candles. So my brain slows down. It makes itself comfy. That sort of that concept of hygge and making your home nice and warm and cozy and stuff.
Yeah, nesting like the birds do, and just plumping your pillows a little bit. There's something to that, because it's like you say, when it gets to mid-October, November, and you feel that deep cold that you haven't felt all year, and you go, ooh, and your first thought is to go get some heat quick. My house is dead drafty. Don't like this place at all. But I want to go back to something in a minute. One thing I noticed, and I hadn't noticed this about any religion before, paganism seems to be more, like you say, inclusive, but it's definitely geared towards female orientated stuff. Is that fair? Because in most religions, women are told that they're lesser. Do you see what I mean?
My experience has been that it's definitely more inclusive of women.
Yeah,
and I think it's not because it's more inclusive of women, more women gravitate towards it.
Yeah, because every other religion seems to treat women appallingly, really, don't they?
I mean, if you look at the kind of the myth of Eve, all women are punished because of Eve's transgression, and Eve's transgression was to eat from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So curiosity in women frowned upon.
And yet, and this is what occurred to me with research, is that I felt that it gave women a proper voice that was equal to men, if you get me.
And in some ways, I think that's unfair, because in the early Christian church, there were some very strong women leaders. But when the Bible got written and they decided which books to keep and which ones to discard, it was then when you get maybe the power involved in that and the control that women's voices become marginalised.
Yeah. And why was that? Why was it marginalised in that moment?
I think it's probably because people don't want to share power. And if you can monopolise it, so if you can take someone like Mary Magdalene, who probably was a disciple of Christ, and make her a prostitute, and she's not in the Bible. She's mentioned a paragraph under a prostitute. But if you think of what you think people know about Mary Magdalene, and, I think you've also got that whole idea with capitalism and people want to inherit property. You then start controlling women and you make them either angels or prostitutes.
Yeah.
And you keep them controlled, and then you can keep control of how money is distributed throughout the ages.
Whereas with the paganism movement, it's never about that, is it? It's never about the commodity side of it, which is what I touched on before. The physical element of stuff isn't there. It's about your individual beliefs and your spiritual angle, and that frees everyone up, doesn't it? To that environment, that experience.
Oh, definitely. And, I'm not going to say that, paganism isn't without its odd quirk or somebody that wants to abuse power. You get it everywhere where there's groups. Yeah. You get gurus and you get people that want to exploit people. We're not completely devoid from it, but I think paganism definitely makes you a freer thinker.
Yes, I found that. With
and it
research,
encourages you to question, and you can get some very structured kind of paths where it's very hierarchical, and you might be in a coven and you might have a high priest and a high priestess, and if that's what floats your boat, good for you. But a lot of people don't. You might as well go back to church if someone's going to tell you what to do all the time.
Exactly. I mean, the one thing that bugs me about, because I was christened, but I never dabbled. I never went back to church or anything like that. The only time I'm in church is when I'm at a funeral, and it always bugs me because they spend 90% of the time talking about their church, basically, about Jesus and that, and then they go, "Oh, by the way, he's all right, isn't he? Like, let's sing a hymn." Oh, yeah. And to me, you're missing the whole point of a funeral. To me, it's about the person, in the box. So when it comes to funerals, actually, I don't mean to be morbid here, but what happens in the pagan movement? How do you go about a funeral?
Well, I mean, I've got another connection I could give you at some point. She's a pagan celebrant, and a lot of people would either go for maybe something like a direct cremation, and then get your own celebrant in to celebrate the life of the person that you've gone. Otherwise, a lot of people are drawn to kind of Greenwood's funeral. That's what I would like when I pass. So actually, your body wouldn't be embalmed. You probably wouldn't have a coffin. You might just be laid in a shroud or a wicker coffin and buried without a headstone or anything like that, so that you go back to earth quicker, sort of thing. Yeah. And your passing has less impact on your natural environment, sort of thing. And again, there's no hard and fast with this. Different people want different things, but I'm probably one of the very few people that's already had her funeral, because when my friend was training for her celebrancy, she wanted to have a practice run. So
really?
over Zoom in lockdown, all my friends gave little stories that they were going to tell about me.
Was there some tears?
Lovely. There was not a dry eye in the house.
Oh, I want to do that now. That sounds pretty fun, actually. I want to see what people think of me. He was a right bastard. I hated that hairless bastard. But no, I mean, I think for me, I always it never sat easy with me, the fact that you go to all this effort to tart up the body, basically, makeup, sewing the eyes up and all this up, and then they're going to bury him anyway in a massively thick box. And to me, it doesn't sit well with me, because again, how's nature going to get to you to put you back in? Do you know what I mean?
And I think it's really interesting that I think my friend was running some death cafes, and she had a pagan death cafe group, and she had a non-pagan death cafe group, because she does funerals for pagans and non-pagans alike, sort of thing. Okay. And you find that within pagans groups that certainly I've been involved in, we are a lot more comfortable talking about death.
Yeah.
I think for most mainstream people, death happens behind closed doors. So somebody passes, they're either in the hospital or the home. You then come and get the morgue will come and take you away, and all of that is done. Whereas we would probably be a lot more hands-on with death. My friend Claire and I were both going to do soul midwifery courses before lockdown. And that's probably something I would only do for my community sort of thing, but being with people while they pass over, and then possibly, you know, keeping the body at home for longer, because with, you know, correct airing and cooling and stuff like that, you could keep your loved one at home for up to 5 days.
Really?
Yep.
I just thought after a day at least, you instantly see issues, and that's why they take you away. I mean, is that something that, I don't know, the state or whatever's sort of took control of?
A lot of people think that you have to call an undertaker as soon as a death has occurred. Now, you do have to register a death, obviously.
Yeah.
But you don't have to shuffle them up. There was a funeral directors local to me where they will give you as much support as you need. So, and if you do want them to come and take the body away sort of thing and deal with that, they will invite you to come in and clean and dress the body. And they will also, they don't call it a funeral home. They call it I think it was the cottage they call it, where you can just come in and go and stuff. And it's not, you know, putting somebody in a god ugly suit that they never would have worn when they were alive.
Yeah.
And, you know, pumping them full of chemicals to make them look like they're alive when they're not.
I know, and why? I again, it's that thing. I don't understand the issue with death, because I've never had an issue with death. It's fascinated me because I don't know what's behind the wall of death. I don't know what's there, and I just don't want to go before my time. Or I don't want to go in a needless way. But after it, I'd like to be the way I came in, natural. If you get me. So I think what you're describing, the cottage instead of like funeral home or embalming. No, I think the way you describe it sounds a lot better. Sounds a lot more
also,
comforting.
I think it helps you with the grieving process, because you're doing the last acts of respect and kindness that you can do for a loved one.
Yeah.
And it's real. You know, when you see the colour drain from somebody and you know that they're gone. Whereas if, you know, a lot of people, especially this past year, 18 months, we've not been with our loved ones when they've passed. And I think that is going to have real psychological impact for people moving forward.
It already has.
Because
you can feel
not
it.
said goodbye properly.
I know, and that's I mean, I know you have to protect one another, but the problem is that moment is sacred, and it only comes once, and it's been sacrificed for something needlessly, and I'll never forgive the people for doing that. I'll never, because, you know, my grandma died recently, and I spent the last year and a half not being able to see her because you don't want to. But she died anyway, and I'm like, I could have spent all that time with her, that extra time, and they kept us apart, and I hate it. I really hate it. But anyway, let's bring it back to Earth, actually, and say, if you could sell paganism to me, well, it's already sold anyway, but never mind. If you could sell it to me as the one thing that really stands out to you as something that's crucial about paganism that you wish, do you wish everyone could be pagan?
No, I mean,
a better place?
One of the things that is different about paganism, I think, to the other big religions is actually we don't proletize. We don't go out there and say, you know, this faith is the only way to salvation. You know,
so you don't knock at the door, knock on people's doors or anything like that.
No, knock on the door.
Someone's ringing a bell.
But what I would say about paganism, and whether people are sold in it or not, is that it is life affirming. You know, every 6 to 8 weeks we have a celebration, and we celebrate that season. So we've just had Mabon. I've just had like the autumn equinox. So my altar is full of conkers and rose hips, and I've been making tinctures and making the most of what is.
So it's all about again, it's all about making the most of that moment in time, isn't it? And putting things together. And
so I've got all of these like little bottles and potions and things of all the elderberries that is, nature gives us the medicine we need. So elderberries and hawthorns and rose hips are chock full of vitamin C, and it's exactly what we need at this time of year to boost our immune syndrome. Boost our immune systems, even.
Yes, nailed it in the first take. Boost our immune systems. Yes, because we need, again, this is why we need that vitamin D, vitamin C, all that lot throughout the whole summer, and ready for the winter, don't we? It's another routine we should always follow, and we haven't done it this year because we've been locking ourselves away.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't. I've gone on as normal. You wouldn't think it, but I do get out a lot in outside, and when it's sunny, I try to not obviously overdo it because I turn into a crab. But I just literally try and soak up as much of that energy as possible from the sun. It's such a good feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, and an earth-based nature religion is just genuinely lovely.
It feels it. It really feels it, because the conversation we're having right now has gone on for nearly an hour, and I'm only just getting into it.
Yeah.
I absolutely love the thought that it's accessible. Paganism is accessible. It's not something like, I don't know, another religion where you have to sort of listen to a load of texts. And I know there's a lot of research into this, but it's at your own leisure, isn't it? It's not something that's forced.
And again, you can be as bookish or not as you want. So if you want to go out and if you want to research what our ancestors did, you can do that. But if you actually just want to, so we're coming into Samhain, which is now Halloween sort of thing, as it got sent off to America.
How important is Halloween to you?
Super important.
Did you obviously this is not a thingy question. I just wanted to know, do you dress up?
Well, there's stuff that I do on a personal level sort of thing, and then there is stuff that I do on an absolutely glitzy kind of it's Halloween level as well. So there will be stuff that I do with my ladies group sort of thing, where we will sit and we will connect to the ancestors. We quite often do something that's called a dumb supper. So basically you have a meal, but you have that meal completely in silence, and you lay a table with the head of the table with nobody sitting there and a plate, and you serve the ancestors food, and you're in complete silence, and you wait for them to come and join you and see if they have any messages for you. Absolutely beautiful. Okay. But then I will also try and see if I can find a Halloween disco, and I will go as a black cat or, the stereotypical witch sort of thing, because a lot of us love the spooky season. We really, really do.
Yes.
And it can be deeply spiritual or not.
But not in an evil way. But in a because again, is it because Halloween is at that time of year where, because I know in books and that it's always described that it's the closest to the spirit world we get before we move forward. Is that, what's your...
It's definitely become that way. There is some evidence to suggest that it actually wasn't a festival of the dead, and that the festival of the dead would have actually been celebrated in the spring when you knew that everybody had survived winter.
Oh, good point. Yeah. Again, it's a circle.
It is a circle, but it's very much that way. We talk about the sort of crone goddesses at this time of year. So you've got goddesses like Ceridwen, and they tend to be this time of year where we're going back in, we're turning our own power inwards, just because that's what nature's doing. Nature is dying down and turning inwards. So we do this between kind of Samhain and Yule. There's like doing that inner work, there's doing shadow work, and then at Yule you kind of get this pause, and I like to think of it as the inhalation and the exhalation before the sun returns, and then we start moving towards the longer part of the year. But because we're doing what nature is doing, and we're mirroring that, and we're living in tune with the earth and not against it, I feel better living this way.
But on that note, I'm going to have to say goodbye. I know.
Well, thank you so much for having me on and letting me chat about all things pagan.
Oh, I'll just delete this in a minute. I'm joking. No, it's been an absolute honour. I mean, I wish I had more time. I'm coming on your podcast, aren't I?
Yes, we would love to have you on the podcast.
And I'll do, obviously, depending on when we do it, obviously you're busy at the moment with the next couple of weeks coming up with Halloween and stuff like that. So I'm thinking I'll have more time to absorb the information you give me tonight and the stuff I've read, and then come on to your podcast and have a proper discussion. How long do your podcasts last for?
Podcasts are about 30 to 45 minutes. We've just worked out for the medium that's what's best, sort of thing. Yeah,
okay. Well, we could. I could probably talk for 10 hours. Me talking about this. It's such a good. It's the one thing I'm taking away from this interview. Is it's such a good feel good. Religion, isn't it? Doesn't seem to be any drawbacks from it.
There's no live this way and you'll go to heaven, or live that way and be punished.
Exactly.
There's a huge emphasis on personal responsibility.
Yes.
So for me, that's why it fits in with veganism. While not all pagans are vegan, an awful lot are, because we take the idea of do no harm.
Yeah. Yes.
Very seriously. And it's difficult to do no harm at all, because my very breathing in and out damages the world in some way because I'm consuming stuff. But I can try to live mindfully and do the least harm that is possible.
Yes. And this is what I was saying to you before about when I finally changed. I couldn't believe it took me this long, because my mindset's always been like, oh, don't protect this, don't do that, and oh my God, why are they knocking that down? Why are they doing it? Because I'm overprotective of nature, and I just don't know why it took me so long to not have that partition anymore when it comes to animals. And then when Stat Wall finally went, paganism has been such a wake up call too, and it's such a nice thing. And you're lovely. It's been good. It's been good to talk to you tonight, and I'm glad I did now. I need to thank, is it Luna?
Luna, yeah.
Put in touch. So thank you, Luna. And what's your friend's name who you do your podcast with?
That's Hazel Sargent.
I knew it was something like another lovely name. Obviously, I'll meet you in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah.
Well, I have to set up a date. You know what it's like. My schedule now up to 3 weeks is booked now. I'm all over the place going. But anyway, it's been an absolute pleasure and honour. Stay there, because I'm going to end the broadcast and say goodbye properly. But if you like this, everybody, follow me, subscribe. You've got a YouTube channel, haven't you?
Yeah, my YouTube channel is all heart-led. There isn't huge amounts on there because most of my content is via the podcast, but occasionally there is. I've
just literally talked to my friend who's into podcasting, into YouTube, doing more YouTube, and he's hooked on it now. He's hooked on it. It's because YouTube's the biggest platform on the planet, and I said to him, use it as a billboard for your podcasts.
Yeah.
Because it brings people to you then. Because I'm assuming you want more people to listen to your podcast.
Yeah, I mean, we're very closely about to have our 10,000th download, which is amazing.
Well done. That's fantastic. It's really, really good. Because podcasting, unlike YouTube and even TikTok, podcasting takes a lot of effort to get to that number. Is such a slog, isn't it?
And it's a very different audience. I mean, I know that when you look at the data and stuff, so the TikTok generation, unfortunately, is only 60 seconds, and then they want to look at the next thing. Whereas to engage somebody for a length of time, so you do get a different type of listener with a podcast.
Well, they're doing it for the long haul. And I mean, my daughter Phoebe, because I went, oh look, I've got 500 views on YouTube, and she went, I've got this. She showed me like 100,000. I went, that does not count. It does not count, because people watch it for 30 to 60 seconds and they flick. They do something else, and that counts as a view.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the same thing. Taking my thunder. Anyway, love to you, and thank you so much for sharing. I know we could have gone into more because I've got loads of notes, but we'll do it next time. We'll do it next time. We'll do it part. I keep saying this, part 2 to everyone, because I could do a big circle and come back around. Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Say goodbye.
Bye-bye.